Alright everyone, so today I wanted to take a look at some of the most underrated epic champions in Raid Shadow Legends. Now these are champions that people don't really consider to be that good, that are actually a bit better than you might think they are, or they're champions that are generally cast aside for a certain reason and just not really looked at. Let's jump right to it and start off with number 1 on the list, and for this champion we are going to end up going to the demon spawn, and I'm going to be talking about Irenis or Irenis. Now, interestingly enough, about this champion, you can actually end up fusing her if you have not yet fused Rosin Scarhide, and I'll show you guys what the screen looks like because I've already actually completed the fusion for Rosin Scarhide. I can't actually do this. Once you fuse Rosin Scarhide, you lose this option, but you can fuse Irenis from the Rosin Scarhide fusion, and if you want to, once you end up completing the Rosin fusion, it's going to disappear. However, it doesn't disappear when you fuse the epics, and what you can do is, if you haven't gotten to this point, you can fuse a copy of Irenis, and then you can get the materials to fuse her again for the Rosin fusion. So you can kind of make 2 copies of her, one to use herself and then one for the fusion. But she is absolutely insane, and she recently did get reworked. She was not as good as she is right now, and now that she's been reworked, she's an absolutely insane clan boss champion. Now, if you take a look at her skill kit, just her first skill right off the bat is crazy, especially for a skill on an epic champion. You'll see here, attacks one enemy, has a 90% chance, which of course you can end up boosting with skill books up to 100%, of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. So you have this on the auto attack already, which is really nice. It's the strong version of poison. It's 100% with skill books, and it's 2 turns. So very strong auto attack for an epic champion, especially for the clan boss. Just an overall very good skill. Any kind of champions that have good poison skills are going to be invaluable for the clan boss. And then her second skill is also absolutely insane, especially considering the synergy that her first skill and her second skill have and how they work together. Overall, makes her an absolutely insane clan boss champion, really overlooked. I don't think a lot of people realize how good Irenis is now after she has been reworked, and I also don't think a lot of people realize that if you don't have her and you still haven't done that Rosin fusion, you can end up getting a copy of her as well without having to get lucky through your shard pulls. Almighty Curse. Attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance, which, as you can see, of course, you can end up boosting all the way up to 100% with skill books, of increasing the duration of all debuffs on the target by 1 turn. This is a really good skill. This reminds me of the skill that Warlord has, of course, as debuff extender. The only thing is, of course, on Irenis, it's not on her auto attack. It's on a cooldown skill, which you can lower down from a 5-turn to a 4-turn cooldown, but nonetheless, the synergy that this skill has with her poison and the overall usefulness that Irenis is going to have on the clan boss with these 2 skills alone is huge. So definitely a champion that is underrated, not really looked at very much, and absolutely going to be worth building to level 60. Now her other skills as well, still very good. Attacks one enemy, places a block buffs debuff for 2 turns, which you can also end up lowering down to a 3-turn cooldown. Very strong skill right there. And also increases ally accuracy in dungeons by 70. Not really the particular reason that makes her super good, but still something extra nonetheless. So fantastic skill kit for a fantastic champion. Is definitely underrated and overlooked by a lot of people. So that's going to be Irenis. Now we're moving on to number 2 on the list, and this is a champion that might surprise some of you, but the reason why I decided to put this champion on the list is because she is available from your daily login rewards, and I wanted to include her because a lot of people seem to cast her aside when they end up taking a look at one of her skills and realize how complicated that skill is. But even if you completely ignore it, she is still a very good champion. And who I'm talking about, of course, is going to be your 90-day login rewards from your daily login reward calendar, and that is going to be Dark Aethel, or Athel, of course, depending on how you pronounce it. So Dark Aethel is going to be in the Undead Hordes, and if we take a look at her skill kit, you guys will see what I'm talking about here. So it's that 3rd skill that's going to kind of scare people off from thinking that she's good, but even if you ignore that skill or if you don't get much benefit from it, she still has a pretty decent skill kit nonetheless. Considering she's a free epic champion, absolutely going to be worth considering taking to level 60 for a lot of players. So her auto attack here, attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 40% chance, which you can end up boosting with skill books up to a 50%. chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. So you have that strong version of decreased defense already tacked on to that auto attack, which is very good. Any kind of auto attack that just does more than the bare basics of attacking one enemy one time is always going to be really useful, considering she has that strong version of a very useful debuff on the auto attack. Very, very good. Second ability as well is going to be her AoE. With a 5-turn cooldown, you can lower it down to a 4-turn cooldown with skill books. Attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. So you've got her AoE, and it also has that decreased speed debuff tacked on it as well. And considering it is an AoE, decreased speed is a good debuff. Now, I personally don't consider it to be one of the best debuffs. I still think increased attack, decreased attack, increased defense, decreased defense are still going to be better, but it's nonetheless a decent debuff to have on a champion. And considering it's on her AoE, which means it's going to affect all enemies that it attacks, overall still a very, very strong skill. Now, her third skill is kind of where a lot of people get scared off into thinking, well, it's just too much. It's never really going to activate, so that means that Dark Aethel is just not really that good. And that's absolutely not the case. Her skill is crazy. Harvest of Despair attacks all enemies, so another AoE, which you can lower down to a 4-turn cooldown with skill books. Places a 30% increased speed buff on this champion for 3 turns if this attack kills 4 or more enemies. Heals this champion by 50% of their max HP if this attack kills 6 or more enemies. Grants an extra turn if this attack kills 10 or more enemies. So you can see that this skill is very specialized towards a dungeon like Spider, where you have the opportunity to kill a lot of enemies, aka the Spiderlings, all at once. But even if you don't end up getting the extra benefits from this skill, it's still an area of effect. And even if you don't really get anything out of the skill altogether, let's just say theoretically you never use the skill at all, her first and her second skill combined already make her a pretty decent champion with that strong version of decreased defense on her auto attack, and then also an AoE with a decreased speed right there. So considering she is a free epic champion, I definitely think that she's underrated. A lot of people see this skill, they freak out. Of course, if you can get the benefit from this skill, that makes her very, very good. But even if you don't, she's still a strong champion nonetheless. Also has a increases ally attack in all battles by 20% aura, which is actually not bad. It's not a completely worthless aura. So overall, definitely an underrated champion. Absolutely going to be worth taking a look at for a lot of you guys. So next up on the list is going to be a couple of champions that I found in a couple of different tier lists that were rated worse than good. So they were like average or bad. And I went back through and I looked at them, and they're actually decent. And one of the themes among some of the next couple of champions is they provide a good amount of buffs and debuffs. And any kind of champions that can provide a good amount of buffs and debuffs are going to be valuable to your team, especially as you get to the mid and the late game. So the next champion on the list is going to be a champion in the Dark Elves, and we are going to take a look at Crimson Helm. Definitely not a champion that you really hear too much about, but she is a defensive-based champion, which as you get to the mid and the late game, you're definitely going to want to work on getting more defensive-based champions, and she's pretty decent. Attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 1 turn. As you can see, it is that strong version of decreased attack. You can boost it up to a 50% chance as well with skill books, and it is on the auto attack. Her second skill attacks 4 times at random. Each hit has a 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. You have her third skill, which in my opinion, the reason why I added her on this list is not because of her second skill, it's because of her first skill having that stronger version of decreased attack, and then her third skill being pretty darn good actually. Places a revive on death buff on and a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. That's a very strong ability right there. 6-turn cooldown, which can be lowered down to a 4-turn cooldown. And in combination with this ability, you have a very strong decreased attack debuff on her auto attack, and then you have the strong version of increased defense on your entire team. So that's pretty strong to have on any kind of champion. So definitely going to be overlooked and underrated because of this. She also has it increases ally HP in dungeons by 33%, which again is not a completely worthless aura. So overall, a pretty decent skill kit on a champion that is overlooked by a good amount of people. Next up on the list, we are going to go to the Dwarves category, and it is going to be Grizzled Djaro. Now, Grizzled Djaro is a fantastic debuffing and buffing type champion that is going to, once again, be defense-based. And as you get to the mid and late game, defense-based champions are going to be a high priority. So you have his auto attack here, attacks one enemy, has a 35% chance of placing a 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. Any kind of additional stuff besides just attacks an enemy on the auto attack is always nice. Heal reduction definitely has its uses in the game, but I don't consider it to be as valuable as things like debuffs and buffs that are going to be like decreased attack, decreased defense, increased defense, and stuff like that. But still, not bad nonetheless. Now, it's not until you get to his second and his third abilities that are very strong. Places a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn. Places a 60% increase defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. 5-turn cooldown, which you can lower down to a 3-turn cooldown. Very, very strong ability right there. Honestly, an absolutely insane ability. I'm not too sure why I see this champion in a lot of people's mid to bad tier lists. He's just really good overall to me, so that's definitely a bit of a shocker. Absolutely would not have him in the mid and bad tier list just because of an ability like this on its own. But you also have another strong ability here. This is going to be his AoE, which you can lower down to a 4-turn cooldown. Has a 75% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. Decreases each target's max HP by 30% of the damage inflicted. So you've got that area of effect, which also has that decreased attack debuff, which is a very nice debuff to have. You can increase the debuff buff chance as well to 100%, another strong ability. So Grizzled Djaro definitely going to be a valuable champion, absolutely worth taking to level 60 because of his skill kit. Now, next up on the list is going to be a champion in the Lizardmen, and it's going to be Durang. Now, I don't remember exactly which one. Okay, he's the first one. I get all the Lizardmen profiles mixed up because they do look pretty similar, but Durang is a fantastic champion. Again, like Grizzled Djaro, fantastic buff, debuff type champion. I don't remember exactly if it's buffs or debuffs, but he has a very, very strong skill. I believe it's on his skill 3 here. So his first ability, attacks one enemy, will ignore 30% of the target's defense. Nothing really too crazy. His auto attack is kind of meh. Another downside to Durang is unfortunately he is an attack-based champion, but his third skill is just so good that he's still going to be worth putting on a list like this. Attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. And his third ability is absolutely bonkers insane. Attacks 3 times at random, has a 50% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff and a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. That is a super insane ability right there to have on a champion. Absolutely phenomenal. Yes, it is attack-based. You can increase the buff debuff chance from 50% up to 75% as well, and you can lower the cooldown down from 4 turns to 3 turns. So this ability alone makes Durang worth putting on a list like this, even though his first and his second ability are, in my opinion, not the best. His second one might be a little bit better because of that stun, but that third ability is bonkers. Then you have his increases ally speed in dungeons by 23%, which once again, is not a completely worthless aura. So overall, very strong champion, absolutely overlooked at by a good amount of people. Definitely going to be worth taking to level 60 and having on your team. And the last champion that I wanted to talk about on the list today is going to be a champion that is very overlooked, and he is not going to be a buff debuff type champion like a lot of the champions that I looked at just now. The reason why I wanted to throw him on this list is because you have a certain skill that he has that is absolutely insane because of the way that the skill works. And who I'm talking about, of course, is going to be a champion in the Undead Hordes, and it's going to be Husk. Now, Husk is not in a lot of people's good tier lists. He's in a lot of actual bad tier lists or kind of like the average category, depending on the list that you look at. But there's one skill in particular that makes him really strong. So his first ability right here, attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 20% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. You can increase that up to a 40%. Attack-based ability right here, kind of meh. You know, it does have that provoke, but still... it doesn't have a crazy debuff or buff on the actual auto attack. It's better than just attacks one enemy, but it's not the absolute most phenomenal auto attack. His second ability right here, this is the one that I'm talking about that is absolutely insane. Attacks all enemies, has a 35% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Damage inflicted is proportional to enemies' max HP. This is the best damage scaler in the game to have on any champion by far. It is so unbelievably powerful, and another champion that has this type of damage scaler on it is going to be Royal Guard, and Royal Guard is going to be in the High Elves. Now, Royal Guard is, in my opinion, going to be a lot better than Husk because he offers a lot else to the table, including that decreased defense, but a lot of people already regard Royal Guard as one of the best epic champions in the game because of this takedown ability right here. And once again, it has that enemy max HP damage scaler, which once you start doing high-level dungeons and endgame content, because enemies have so much HP, that damage scaler is going to be absolutely bonkers. So that's why that alone is going to be worth bringing Husk into a list like this, is because even though the skill itself might not seem too crazy, his auto attack's kind of meh because it has that enemy max HP damage scaler. You're going to see some massive damage numbers with this in late game content. Third ability, attacks when enemy damage increases according to this champion's current HP. You know, it's okay, especially if you have a decent amount of HP on him. You can lower the cooldown and increases ally HP in the arena by 30%. Kind of a meh, or probably not going to be using it in the arena. But even though all of his skills except for his second one are kind of meh, because of that, absolutely going to be worth considering taking the 60, and a very underrated champion because of it. Now, that's going to be it for the list today. There are plenty of other epics that I could talk about, but we're going to keep it here because we're already at about 15 to 16 minutes, and if I missed out on a bunch of epic champions that you guys consider to be very good, that a lot of people don't consider to be very good, don't worry. There absolutely could end up being a part 2 and even a part 3 to a video like this. So keep an eye out in the future. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want more videos like this, consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to toss a quick like. It means more than you can even imagine, and more videos coming out real soon. Feel free to check out the other videos on the channel, over 100 Raid Shadow Legends videos. If not, until next time though, have a great day, and this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.